I'm Dan Goldstein from London Business School. This session is, of course, about practice, how to do it in practice. I am an Ivy League academic, so I don't know what's going on in practice, but my illustrious panel here certainly does. If you could just introduce yourself, where you work, and what you find interesting or compelling.
Okay, I'm Simon Andrews. Until 2 weeks ago, I was with Mindshare doing digital strategy, and I left to start a new business in mobile. I think the thing, I've worked in digital creative agencies for the past 15, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. The thing I think is really interesting is everything has changed. That what used to be quite a small thing is now mainstream. And I loved Richard's point before, we treat it like it's Channel 5. So I think that the thing that interests me is when do we start accepting it's mainstream and changing the way we do our business to reflect the thing that consumers are already doing in huge numbers.
Hi, I'm Mark Cross. I'm Communications Planning Director at the COI. Just a brief word about the COI for those that don't know it. It's the Central Office of Information. So we're basically we provide marketing services and communications into government departments and various agencies working with marketing and communication colleagues in the public sector. So typically we're about driving, we're using kind of communications to help influence some form of behaviour change. So actually some of our campaigns are incredibly complex and incredibly challenging. So yeah, that's where we are now, yet alone kind of moving forward. And I think you know, we also are a big procurer of agency skills in the marketplace as well as deliver that ourselves. And I think we kind of recognise the new model, and we also recognise that the way we work and the organisational structures we have need to evolve and move forward. So I think you know, it's a fascinating journey that we are underway on. I mean, and from our point of view, we're very much, you know, digital is part of every solution. We are multifaceted solutions involving lots of kind of channels and stakeholder audiences. We need to engage multiple audiences with different messages. So we're deploying a lot of kind of best practice, if you like, now. But we also recognise that you know, that we need to define, if you like, a new best practice going forward. Thanks.
Cool, I'm Jonathan, MD of OMD UK. We're a full-service media planning and buying agency. I guess I'm going to take a little bit of an argumentative stance on the panel today, just because why not? You know, I kind of believe that fundamentals of marketing haven't really changed at all. I think what's happened is that the digital revolution has absolutely changed how we do it, the techniques we need to use, the immediacy and rapidity we need to plan and activate our marketing activity. But the fundamentals really haven't changed. It's all about having fantastic consumer insight and delivering a product to the consumer that's absolutely fantastic. And I think what the digital revolution has kind of delivered is the role of marketing in an organisation now has just been turned up to 11. So you've got to be authentic, you've got to be transparent. You can't just tell consumers you've got a great product. You've got to believe it and live it and be it, from a corporate right down to product. The TripAdvisor example earlier, you know, if you've got a rubbish hotel, that'll be found out. So I think it's a clarion call, really, I suppose, to really integrate marketing into your whole organisation, as opposed to it being, you know, just doing the advertising bit.
I'm Bob Thacker with OfficeMax in the States, and OfficeMax is one of the 3 large players in the office products category. We are a company that is a $9 billion turnaround, or a startup, I mean. We call it a startup because we're acting like one. And there's an old saying that necessity is the mother of invention, but poverty is the mother of all mothers. And our marketing budgets have always been trimmed and very, very lean. And so by default, we actually were forced, but now are happy to be heavily engaged in the digital space. And it actually has given us a head start on our competition and others, because we've been living there heavily for 4 years. And I think that it's interesting. I mean, I could see in the future, with all respects to Google and sponsoring an amazing conference, but I can see in the future that the necessity to have a conference dedicated to digital really might not need to exist, because it's really all about communication and the emphasis on the co-part of the communication. I think that you know, online activity, the computer is not a medium as much as it is an appliance. It's something that people live with continually, they're in dialogue with, it's connected to their life constantly. And so, you know, a challenge that we always hold up to ourselves and our partners is to make sure that our messages are respectful of that audience, and that we're not just screaming in their ear or shouting through the monitor, but finding a way to truly, as I've said before, advertising in general is a party crasher. It's an uninvited guest, so to make sure that you're really providing something of value, you connect with them emotionally, you do something that makes the experience and the time that you've spent together a rewarding one. So, thank you very much. I'll now go have lunch.
Okay, so let's start with Jonathan's point, just push a little down on that. The fundamentals of marketing have not changed. How can you say that? You look at any business book, the introduction, all the statistics about media consumption, things have changed radically. We're on Facebook having these many-to-many conversations, completely spending time in different ways than we did before. How can you say the fundamentals of marketing haven't changed?
Because I think, I genuinely think the rules of marketing is about listening to the consumer. It's about finding out what they want and supplying it profitably. That's the role of marketing within an organisation. And that fundamentally hasn't changed. The techniques and what you do to execute marketing now are absolutely radically different. So the skill set of a marketeer is very, very different now than it was in the past, but the fundamentals of the role is exactly the same. And I think it's just important to recognise that there's certain truisms around brands and businesses that remain the same today. It's just that they're more powered up and more obvious to the consumer. But, however, executionally, a spot on ITV in Coronation Street is not going to deliver what it did 20 years ago. So the range of skills and the range of understanding and the expertise that's required in the role of marketing is huge. I think that leads on to the whole agency question of all these different specialisms, different expertise that we need to corral back into having a one single story to consumer. But the fundamentals of the role aren't different. It's how we do it needs to change.
If I can hitchhike on that, I think marketing is printing the invitations to the party, and that, and we talked about this a bit before, that the party itself, in retail particularly, happens at the point of sale. And so the best you can do is hope to get a willing customer to engage with the product, and then it's turned over way beyond your control. And a personal example, I worked with Sears for 2 years and head of marketing there, and my mother used to say, if you have a burned cake, all the frosting in the world isn't going to make it anything more than a burned cake. And Sears was a badly burned cake, and marketing, they had tons of icing that we made to cover that burned cake. But in the end, the experience, all the marketing, it was some really great marketing, but it only sets up a lie, and lies are quickly found out.
I think we need to make a distinction. There's marketing hasn't changed, but most of us in this room have grown up on mass marketing, which is a pretty recent phenomenon when half the population got TV set, mass marketing works. Now half the population have got a broadband connection. I don't think it does anymore in the same sort of way, because you can go out and shout at people on TV, but if what you're saying, if you've got a burnt cake, people will find about it very quickly. So it's the mass marketing, that blip that happened that made it very easy to spend a lot of money and shout about an inadequate product and not worry about too many other things. You can get distribution, you can make that work. That's the bit I think that's coming to the end. We're back to marketing how it's been since the 12th century. You've got a product, you want to tell people about it, but you have to be authentic. You have to be more honest, you have to be more rooted in what your product's about these days. So if you've got good products, I think you're fine. If you've got bad products, you've got a problem.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. So that what we've been experiencing in the 20th century was kind of this artificial, short-lived thing, and real marketing, which goes back to the marketplace.
You used to talk to people what you've got. If they liked it, they tell other people. If they didn't like it, they tell you. We're going back to that now. We're going back to almost a medieval way of doing things, just accelerated by the fact you do it on broadband rather than over the marketplace once a week.
The village is bigger.
A lot bigger, yeah.
It's when our budgets had been slashed so many times that I literally took one of my chairs into the CEO's office and said, "I've burned all the others. Do you want this one too?" And talk about cutting your way to success. But at one point, I joked with my staff and I said, "We just need to hire people who gossip, and that's all we can do." And actually, what happened with Facebook and all the rest is we have people who gossip. Yeah. So. Primitive form.
So if we're returning to a primitive form, does this mean firms today and agencies today are optimized for the digital world? Or?
Let me say, I've got something about freedom because I'm now not with an agency. I think it's very hard. I think the industry has grown up around what clients wanted. You can centralize all that resource in one place. But then it's also balkanized in lots of specialist skills. So you were talking before, if you want someone to buy your media, well, that's separate from the creative, separate from direct marketing, separate from PR. Within media, if you want someone to buy your search, that's separate from the guy who does it. We've broken it down and down and down. And I think, without being rude to any clients in the room, the amount of money that the client business is paying for agencies hasn't really reflected that change in the complexity of the things we deal with now. So I think that model is creaking quite a lot. And I think what you're seeing is people moving to try and work with good talent rather than business as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think it's a difficult time for agencies. They've got loads of very smart people who do really good work, but that model doesn't feel as right for 2009 as it did for 1999 and 1989.
I think because they're fractured, too, it makes the client be the integrator.
Yes.
And some clients are good at that and some aren't. But having all of the services fractured means oftentimes, there is so much work in getting everything integrated that I find it very inefficient.
Well, I think agencies used to solve people's problems and then work out what to do about that. And there's a great, taking the cake, J. Walter Thompson invented Mr. Kipling cakes to deal with falling sales of flour. And they came up with the whole idea of a product mill. They solved someone's problems. And now most agencies turn up and they sell what they do. And so the clients try and work out how do I solve that problem. I think the role for agencies is to go back to, let's try and work out what your problem is, how we'd solve it, and then maybe we can help orchestrate the various talents needed to deliver that solution.
Yeah, I mean, again, from our point of view, we're accessing and using agencies as partners in all sorts of specialist areas, in all areas of implementation, and also we have access to the best talent and brains in the market as well. But you're right, the onus increasingly becomes back to the client about how you orchestrate that talent, how you also think about what you need at the formation stages, who you need, what you need from them, and then begin to kind of shape that through implementation. And the kind of needs change. And I think we all know that the business model of the agency marketplace is based upon the commission system of days gone by and so on. So we know there's dysfunctionality in all of that. And again, we see more credentials presentations, I guess, than anyone else in the marketplace. And regardless of the specialisation they're from, they all claim to be integrated, they all claim to be 360. And again, so agencies kind of struggle with their own language. And actually, from our point of view, our view as 360 is the kind of view of the consumer from the respect of all the influencer groups, particularly when it comes to government and the issues we're trying to change. And actually, agencies can't give us that complete 360 view. It might be a 270 view, but let's acknowledge it's a 270 view. And so on. So it is about kind of a new kind of working collaboration that isn't suited to the models that we're carrying forward.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, I think, Richard's model of bought versus earned. If the market is moving towards earned, what's the point of commission? That's a very archaic way of paying an agency. And also, I think the kind of open sourcing thing. I think agencies need to recognise and respect each other's disciplines and expertise and work together to deliver a strategy back to the client. Because not everybody's an expert in every area. And I think the digitisation of everything has blurred quite a lot of boundaries between the roles of agencies. Who owns a widget? Is that the PR company? Is that the advertising agency? Is that the media agency? So it creates quite a lot of competition and confusion about what agencies' roles are in the client's portfolio roster of agencies. So I think clients really need to be very clear about what expertise they're paying for and define roles for the agencies about how they play in that. And I think from our perspective, the best way of getting your agency to work together, pick the best one person from that agency, get them in a room, 4 or 5 people, generalist, intelligent, bright people who've got a point of view, and allow the experts to help and then deliver that, rather than some circumstances I find myself in with 25 people in a room, not generally the best way to get a decent strategy out.
When I was at BBDO, I found that at times I felt like I was present at the death of someone, and all the errant cousins had shown up to take a piece of the will. Because it felt like all these different parts and pieces were constantly in play, and as the lead agency, it was incumbent on us to kind of say, okay, here's the master plan. And then at that time, Interactive was kind of the bastard child that nobody figured out where to put, so they were off by themselves, and they were competing, and everyone. I think your idea is a really good one, given the state of the time, that the client should pull together the best, and but it's kind of a sad comment that we have to pull together all of these errant cousins at the will, if you, and say, all right, get along. You're going to get the silverware, and you're going to get the bedspread, or whatever. But bad analogy, but but I think it's very frustrating, and it's we found that we have two very small agencies formed by brilliant people who were leaders in the industry. They also have media resources together with them, and because we don't spend hardly anything on traditional media, it's very manageable. But it's I think it'll become more and more challenging with time. I think more and more, and I don't know that I'm going to really kill myself here, but I think that, but I'm in a foreign country, so all right. But I think that it's really the large holding company model is great, can be great for shareholders, investors. I don't think it has anything to do with clients. And because of that, I think it's created and challenges in managing it from the inside too. So
I think it's kind of fair to acknowledge there that we all face the kind of structural problems. Again, I think it's whether you're in an agency, whether you're in a client organisation, we're kind of used to sort of vertical silo structures in the way we kind of do business. And actually by just kind of reflecting, we need to catch up with the consumer in the way they're just simply kind of integrating everything on their own terms. Actually, the right kind of structural interfaces for that are kind of vertical. Sorry, yeah, that's right, so horizontal rather than vertical. So kind of we need to rewire some of our processes to reflect that reality, and that's really challenging. But I think it's agencies need to do it, clients need to do it, and again, the kind of core principles of marketing, I think, have never been truer, but how we, the things we do to organise the practice, again, probably need quite some significant change.
I think, from an agency perspective, it's integration and having that broad skills is one of our core values. Sometimes we get marked down by clients because we haven't got a separate brand that does digital. So do you not do digital then? You don't call it something different? Or you don't bring in a digital expert into the room to do the digital bit? And I think that's just, clients are nervous about buying an integrated play because they think, well, actually, are you best in market at each of those specialisms? And that's the constant dichotomy. If I was a client, which I would be like, well, do I go with a specialist? Do I go with a generalist? Because there's disadvantages and advantages of both, and it depends what you want to get out of it. And I think that's why the market's developed how it has, is because, and also from entrepreneurial people. People set up specialist agencies, and they say they're brilliant, so a client wants to go and buy that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, again, for our priority is always that we must absolutely spenders of taxpayers' money deliver efficiency. We must deliver value for money. It's an absolute kind of corporate, it's in our DNA. But we also recognise that we need to deliver effect as well. And I guess that these things aren't mutually exclusive. We need efficiency, but actually we need to kind of move forward and kind of unlock new value, which we probably haven't defined yet. And that requires us to, again, kind of create new kind of benchmarks of what's important to us, which the industry doesn't actually help very readily with, because it's data is overwhelming. Some of it's fantastic, some of it is confusing, and you can kind of get lost in that. So I think again, it's a kind of as the business needs to really search out new references for value, it's a bit of a kind of collective effort required to do that.
You have to ask, what does it take to make that happen? They take the world's worst recession for 60 years, they take collapse of the media business to do that. Or, because the things that are happening within agents and clients are not very radical, to my view. It's still business as normal. I think that's the one thing I find quite odd, that things are changing. The government owns banks now, it owns the car companies in the States. People going out of business, very, very different ways of doing things in almost every other part of business, apart from marketing. And it feels like that's waiting to actually make the switch as well.
I feel, though, that the agency world is changing, and at least from what I'm observing, that there are more and more people spinning off, there are more individual solutions, and that and I'm not at a big agency, forgive me, but I've many friends that, our heads of large agencies are scratching their heads still saying, well, what is this online thing? How do we factor it in? What do we do with it? And I think they're encumbered by their weight. And I think at least what I'm seeing is a much more nimble marketplace, much more responsive.
Yes.
So there is change. It may not be revolution, but it's quietly evolving.
So now we can measure everything, we can track everything. Does this make life easier for communicating what's working, what's not working?
I'd argue yes. I think you can measure a lot of things you can't measure before. If you think back to before digital, you sit there, you plan your TV campaign, you get 400 ratings, you put it out there. At the end of the campaign, you sat and looked, did the 400 ratings go out? Tick. How did sales do? Let's have a look at sales over that period. Seems to have gone up, tick. We'll do it again next year. Yeah. We didn't, the econometric modeling came along, a little bit more sophisticated. We can now measure lots and lots of actions. Yeah. So Ford, Mindshare client, you can't really measure a sale of a car to a TV commercial or to a digital search or whatever, but you can sort of start to look for surrogates for that. So if somebody's going to book a test drive on the website, well, what action drove that? Which series of actions drove that and made that important? So you can measure those. If someone's configuring a car, someone's looking at loan details, you can start to find surrogates you think are indicative, so you can measure that. That makes our life easier. Mm-hmm. It's more complicated because there's lots more to measure, and you have to work out what's important and what isn't important, but I argue that extra information makes our job easier.
It's that kind of where you're looking at the kind of right data in the right way. I mean, again, from our point of view, we're looking to really demonstrate the contribution of communications to achieving behaviour change, some kind of behaviour change, and that's there's all sorts of other interventions at stake. So let's not pretend that's easy, because it isn't. Let's not pretend it's easy in the context of all the kind of the complexity in the media marketplace we face, because it isn't. But it just requires us, I think, to kind of step back from that and kind of take a wide view and really kind of try and create our own visibility. So again, trying to kind of move away from the assumptions that have kind of supported some of our thinking today and kind of recreate new assumptions. And that, so for us, we are looking to really upgrade our emphasis upon evaluation as a kind of driver of planning, the systems that kind of support that, but also the kind of thinking as well. So I think there needs to be a wholesale kind of connection across, outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. Where's the pathway? And we've got to work through those pathways for ourselves. And the industry has to kind of begin to find its place as well. So this digital data, we have fantastic metrics within the digital space. We're using, we have dashboards which are kind of really keeping us in touch, but probably we don't have it on our strategic dashboard of delivering behaviour change for for example, the Change for Life campaign. It needs to be a proper feature at the kind of high table of, is this campaign working or not, delivering value to taxpayers' money over the medium term. So the questions just kind of get quite big, and we need to, I think, to sort of reframe how we go about evaluation. And the other key part of that is it drives innovation and gives you permission to experiment. So again, it's not kind of just the dry stuff. Yeah. The two things are entirely related. So we kind of need innovation running alongside a better joined up science of the task we're facing.
I think data's, 2 or 3 years ago, we were saying we're going to put digital at the heart of our agencies and digital at the heart of our businesses. Yeah. I think data will end up being at the heart of most people's businesses and at most people's agencies. It's really important, but it's also really important to recognise the fallibility of data sometimes, and intuition is also important. There's an asymmetry in terms of the data that's available in digital channels versus all the other stuff you do. And the last click or the view-through window, that's data. It's not necessarily attributable to that sale, in my view. And if you've got certain silos in digital, they'll support that data as being, this is absolutely your ROI, therefore you should put all your money in digital. That's just simply not the case. And I think we just need to recognise, measure outcomes. I think it's really important. So what we're actually trying to achieve, sales, profit, whatever it is, and work backwards to a balanced scorecard of how KPIs have been affected by our marketing communications, but also how those KPIs affect each other. So if your key brand KPI is Net Promoter Score, how does a point increase in that affect your search ROI? Because then you'll know how much you should be investing in each of those channels to drive your overall business. And looking at these things in silos and on their own, and that often happens in agencies as well as client businesses, can lead to things like all online activity is for ROI, short-term ROI. We don't do any branding on digital. It's all about banners, search, and ROI. And that limits the role of digital for quite a few of our clients, actually, because they're not prepared to risk, doing brand work in digital channels. Alternatively, it's the other way where the TV is all about brand awareness and nothing to do with driving search. Well, it's just not the case.
Again, we've got to kind of break out the kind of linear assumptions about assigning attributes to channels at kind of macro level, isn't it? The truth is we need to unlock the value of the connections across all the channels, and it's actually reading the kind of how these combinations are working together is much more significant than trying to work out what's the relative effect of TV versus online versus radio or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how it all fits together, plus what are the combinations that are really driving new value is part of, I think, the reframing of the evaluation kind of focus we need.
Right.
I think it's naive to think that online cannot be a brand vehicle. We haven't had any other choice, and our brand has been affected dramatically by what we've done online. So, and then the other thing I think about is, everybody talks about clicks, but we talk about the clock. We talk about the amount of time that people spend, and that relates then back to how they are affected, or the brand affects them and their interaction with it. So, clicks don't count, but clocks do.
Let me open it up to the floor for questions for our panel that you might have about agency side, advertiser side, interaction between the two, measuring. Yes, over here. There's a microphone coming towards you. Yeah.
Hi. Is it on?
Yeah.
My name's Mark Cadbury. I'm from hardware.com. We are just an IT reseller, but as the name suggests, we are just online. Hardly ever done any advertising outside that. But what I'm interested in, Jonathan, actually, is how do you go about putting your agency out there online in practical terms? Because
in terms of marketing our own agency?
Exactly.
I hope Mr. Wren or Bernardo isn't here. We have a global strategy on the internet, and our website's not perfect. I think we had a revamp the other day. We don't invest a lot of our own money in marketing ourselves online, unfortunately. And I think, agencies, it's a classic thing, we're crap at marketing ourselves. We spend a lot of time doing it for our clients and therefore don't have time to do it ourselves. Our search strategy, we don't have a PPC strategy. Our natural search, our head of search is sat down there, Mark, and he will be shocked at our search strategy. There's loads more we could do. But the finances of our business make marketing investment is quite difficult to manage for ourselves. But I think we could do a lot better in terms of what we do for our own business. But because we're B2B, because we have quite a small market of clients, we do a lot more face-to-face stuff, I guess, rather than loads of mass B2B communications. So we're not fantastic, but do as we say, not as we do. Does that answer your question?
Next question. Here.
Greene, HMDG. Just a question for Mark, really, but the others can contribute. You do have a very distinct agency roster at the moment. How do you envisage that changing over time? And we'll let Jonathan follow up. How will he get on the roster next time?
Got a pitch for the business. No, we do. I think how you begin to manage the procurement process. Again, we're quite a unique animal in the sense that we are a hybrid of a practitioner and a procurer. And I think we've absolutely recognised the value of the specialist agencies as they've evolved. And of course, I think we are constantly looking at how we need to kind of evolve the structure going forward, and the frameworks have to run to a certain period. And at that point of review, which is next spring, you'll probably see some changes in terms of how they are currently structured, simply because the dynamics have moved on. So, we kind of have, at the moment, the strength about our frameworks is actually we can access the entrepreneurial skills alongside the big, the strong kind of resource from the big organisations in the same room, part of the same team, So actually, whilst they might appear to be kind of quite separate, the practice of them can actually pull together quite a diversity of skills and talent, which works quite well, despite the superficial appearance of their structure.
Jonathan, you want to?
Well, I think the political answer to that is
how you're going
PhD and Manning Gottlieb MD are on the CR roster, so we choose not to go for that. I guess, we run our business to serve our clients' interests, and there's a pitching process that goes on, and we try to develop our business as fast as our clients require. I think I'll come back to a bit earlier, which is there is quite a lot of inertia in the business, and we're fundamentally, as a media agency, we're a bit of a middleman. So we've got media owners on one side and we've got our clients on the other, and therefore we kind of have to serve and work with all the media owners and how they're set up, and we kind of have to serve quite a broad spectrum of different clients. And every single one of our clients is very, very different in terms of what they expect from our agency. So we try and keep up and move ahead for those clients that require that, need that, but then we have other more traditional clients who want something very different. So I think the challenge for agencies is being able to offer a great service and a great delivery from a client that spends £100 million on television advertising, and that's all they do, versus a client that spends £500,000 in social media. And that's the range of scope that we have to deliver as a big kind of networked agency in the UK. And that brings challenges, because you have to innovate, you have to invest, and sometimes you have to invest ahead of where the income is. We look at mobile. We've had a mobile operation at OMD for the last 3 years. We've had dedicated people that are expert in mobile, deliver mobile campaigns. That has not washed its face commercially since its inception. But we can't not have a mobile offering as an agency, because clients go, well, what kind of agency are you?
Yeah.
So there's lots of challenges within an agency, but I think we're dealing with them quite well. And I think that the pace of change has picked up, and I think the recession, every MD, every media agency, creative agency CEO I speak to over dinner is just saying this is a massive agent of change, and the marketing services agency landscape will be very different, I think, in 2 or 3 years' time as it is now.
Next question, right here.
I just wanted to say that quite a lot of the insights today and the best practice is obviously drawn from understanding the consumer, having a great insight, and then executing. But a lot of the best practice has actually been showcasing work that's done inside of one market. And of course, this is a UK-focused event. But many businesses, including our own, I work with Sony Ericsson, actually operate a global model now, which adds a lot more complexity. And just thinking about how, for example, the T-Mobile campaign could actually work on a global basis is kind of a cool challenge, but a difficult one that I can't solve at the moment. So I just wondered if there's any wisdom from the panel with regard to how to apply some of this in a global matrixed organisation.
Good question.
I spent the last 2 years looking at our digital strategy for our clients on a global basis, and it's quite hard because this is quite an advanced market, and some markets are very different. But what you are finding, wherever you are in the world, people, a proportion of the population have a broadband connection. They tend to be people who are most economically interesting to a lot of our clients, in small numbers. Lots of different access to internet cafes or whatever. But those people search, they use social networks, and they share things online as well. So that, we've got a common approach from people using this technology now. So you can start to have a macro level of strategy, okay, what we're trying to do. What will work in the UK will work less well in Mexico because you're going to reach less people with there. But I think that your blend of digital versus television, and it's always going to be a blend of those two things, that blend will shift according to the makeup of those markets. There's some markets in the world where TV is still the best way to spend almost all of your money because people still watch it in very big numbers and it's really effective. We think that will change, but generally if you've got a macro view of what you're trying to do with your brand and how traditional and digital work together, you can make that play in most markets. You change the ingredients, the proportion of the ingredients slightly.
I think a couple of the worst questions we get asked as a media agency is, well, first of the question, what percentage of my money should I spend online? Well, it kind of depends what you want to do. The even worse one is a global diktat to say we should be spending 15% of our money online, and then we have to kind of work a plan around that. For me, I suppose the way I would probably approach that is, and I refer to the Walker's example, is if you focus on the idea and the brand, then that idea and brand idea could be translated around the world. So they do us a flavour campaign, fantastically digitally marketed. It's It's all about giving the consumer control, co-creation, being open, allowing people to have conversations around it. And digital technology enabled that campaign to be delivered much more effectively in the UK than it could have been perhaps 5 years ago. But it's not to say a campaign like that couldn't be translated around the world, no matter what digital penetration was. So just taking the idea that originates from marketing for a digital world as opposed to digital marketing is how I would probably approach it. And there's no reason why you couldn't take the T-Mobile idea and make that work, because it's not really, that's a TV ad, basically. It's got digital kind of new wave marketing techniques in it, but it's not a digital idea. It's just a great advertising idea, communications idea.
I think we have time for one last short question. If anyone wants to seize that opportunity. Yeah, right here on the aisle.
Hi there, I'm Martin from Guava. I'm really interested in the fact that I've been sat in a conference with Google for an entire morning, and we've hardly heard a mention of search specifically. And I'm just interested in the experiences of the panel around search from a branding perspective rather than perhaps from a direct response perspective.
We just want to answer.
Yes. I will speak to that. I think Google is a wonderful host, and so we've been instructed not to mention, I'm teasing. Anyway, search is absolutely essential to us. It's a significant part of our budget. I say if you really aren't engaged in search, then you might as well not have an address or a phone number. It's absolutely essential to connecting us with our consumers and our products, so it's pivotal.
All right. So let's thank our panel, Simon, Mark, Jonathan, and Bob.